Hello everyone, welcome to Weekend Winters. I am Christy Winters and it is the weekend. It is Sunday and that means that it is time for me to babble at the camera for a little while. Now, as you can see here, I'm kind of adjusting my setup a little bit. My normal curtain that's over here in the middle of the night, I got up to do something, I came back and I just pulled on it, moved it too hard, ripped the whole thing down. So I had to move it a little bit. Anyway, doesn't matter. How you guys doing today? I hope you are doing well. Hiya, Transgamer Girl. How you doing, DNF fan, or DN fan, in the chat as well, and the Lucky Wanderer, I see you, and that's Terrorists, bro, I see you too, hello. All right, so, do you ever, have one of those mornings, or any time, really, when you're actually, you're doing fine, life is going well, you're not too stressed out about anything, and then, something starts to irritate you, and it really just keeps irritating you, and suddenly you're in a bad mood. That's how I'm doing today. I've got this really expensive webcam, Logitech, and all I want is to download an interface for my Logitech C920 that allows me to adjust the camera a little bit. That's all I want in life, and I can't freaking find this stupid thing to do it, and it's really making me mad. Anyway, breathe in peace, breathe out BS. Okay, we're gonna do a peaceful meditation. I don't think I'm going to need this too much today. All right, so what I want to talk to you guys about is as we enter the last 3 weeks of the election in the United States, and being an American, that makes me very egocentric and self-centered, and so I have to talk about myself. I thought we would look a little bit at why we have some things to be positive about. Now, I know as people on the left, and as Democrats, especially after 2016, there is a, one of my curls is much curlier than the other curl. We have a lot of justification, post-traumatic stress related to winning the popular vote, but not winning the election. Let's just call it for what it is, right? And I'm going to have some coffee and my beautiful cologne mug, which has got the cathedral on it right here, which if you ever come to Cologne, you should check out because it's wonderful. But we had this mismatch in our heads in 2016 because Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million votes. And I've heard people go, oh, well, that was just California. Well, no, California helped, but you needed the votes everywhere to get to a plus 3 million. And and it tends to be the case that the popular will of the people leans left, and the structures of the way the Electoral college system works is that it disproportionately advantages conservative areas. So even though people want a Democrat, or at least prefer a Democrat, we end up with Republicans. We get cheated. We get cheated out of who we're electing for office. And that has happened a couple times now. It happened with George W. Bush in 2000. It happened again with Clinton and Trump in 2016. I don't think it's going to be happening again in 2020. And I want to look at why that is. Why is it that even though the numbers between Clinton and Trump were, let's say, the same at this point in the race back in 2016, it's a completely different race. And it really is a very, very structurally different race underneath those aggregate numbers. Because I want us to all kind of I want to calm down. I voted. I went in. Actually, I initially had a friend who was going to sign for me, and he went and witnessed my ballot. But when I looked at the papers for the Wisconsin instructions, I noticed that it said on one sheet, you don't need an American citizen, a U.S. citizen, to witness your ballot. It can just be any adult. But on the form that you have to actually fill out and sign, the person has to attest to the fact that they're a U.S. citizen. So which is it? And I didn't want to get in trouble. I did not want to have some Republican, do a challenge on my ballot, make it provisional, and have it thrown out. I'm not quite sure how provisional ballots work or how that would work in the state of Wisconsin in a recount, but I didn't care. I didn't want to take any chances. So I ripped all that up, and I went and I reprinted out my ballot. I've got a colleague who is from the States. She votes in Michigan, absentee. Went over to her place, socially distanced, And actually her husband, who has got a lot of health issues, like wasn't even home. He was out running errands, but just to be, extra safe. So she witnessed my ballot. She didn't look at my ballot because it's a secret ballot, but she saw me vote and put it in the envelope and seal it, which is what the requirement is. Then she put down her stuff, and so I had it sitting in my counter, all set to go, except after it was in the sealed ballot, like the ballot was put into a plain envelope and then sealed. I had to wrap this piece of paper around it that had like official federal postage stamp. Like, even though it wasn't an envelope, I had to wrap the envelope in this piece of paper and tape that together. And then I had to put all that in another envelope itself. So it was like triple packaged. And I got that to the post office this week. So I paid something between €7 and €8 to have a tracking number attached to it. And I sent it off. And I was hoping that after I voted, I'd feel better. I was hoping that there would be some sort of like, I've done my bit. I've done my bit. And I really don't. I felt a little bit better, but it's not perfect. Like, I don't feel that efficacious. In all honesty, I felt more efficacious when I gave people money. Like when I've given the Biden campaign like $200 now. I gave Jamie Harrison $50, and that felt more efficacious, honestly, than my vote. So we got in the chat, I see John Doe saying, why don't they just get rid of the Electoral College? It's complicated to get, the Electoral College is part of the Constitution. And in order to change the Constitution, you have to introduce an amendment with the exact wording for the change in 2 consecutive sessions, I believe, of Congress. So you can't just do it once and send it out. You have to pass it through twice. And then it has to go to the states. And 2/3 of the states have to ratify the change. Now, that number is 37. And even though there are a lot of people, individuals across the country, who believe in the popular vote, in terms of political power, if you look at what a popular vote would do, it would make California, Texas, Florida, and New York the most important places to campaign, which leaves out Iowa, Ohio, Nebraska, Michigan. So in terms of a state-by-state impact on the outcome, small population states have no incentive to give up the power that they have in terms of the Electoral College votes that they can contribute to the total. So that's why they don't get rid of it. It's because it's part of the Constitution. Changing the Constitution is difficult. 2, and 3, the places that would benefit the least are actually more populous than the places that would benefit the most, because of where the population is distributed across the country. So we're stuck with it, I think, for the foreseeable future. I don't see, of all the things that you can expend your political will on, I mean, we couldn't even get 37 states in time to say that, like, you shouldn't be discriminated on the basis of your sex, or now you'd say sexual identity or sexual orientation, or whatever, your gender identity or your gender. And so, we're stuck with this system, certainly for this election, and I just don't see all of it. It would be like, how we have the primary system right now, and it starts in a little podunk state, sorry, Iowa. What it does, it starts in a little podunk state, predominantly white, predominantly rural, completely unrepresentative of the majority of Americans, and yet they get the first kick at the can. And when you say, okay, well, let's change the primary system. Well, Iowa ain't gonna like that, and it's gonna be difficult. And then who goes first? If it's not Iowa, then who? Right? And then everyone else is like, oh, it should be us, it should be us, it should be us. And so you end up arguing so much over the possible solutions that you never actually change anything, because it's what we call path dependency in political science, that once you go down a road and you're in that direction, it becomes increasingly difficult to go back and restructure things. So yeah, that's why. Hope that helped, John. Brett sucks. The Republicans would never allow that, because without the Electoral College, they would, especially now, you're seeing a real divide in America. between, I mean, there's always been an urban-rural divide, but the kinds of policies that people in urban areas want to talk about people in rural areas, it doesn't affect their lives in the same way, and they feel like they're getting all of this imposition. I had a whole, sorry, wrong direction. There we go. So you can see no curtain now. You can just see it's an empty room behind me. And so it unbalances my thing here. Stupid. Here, let me slide this over. I sing a song to you while I'm moving the camera over. How old am I? Am I really going to be 50 in 2 years? I don't act like it. So there's this whole lie that we talked about, the rugged individualism and freedom from the government, personal freedom and all that ends up really privileging those people who have their wealth built on stealing stuff from other people, and now they don't want to help anybody else up the ladder. They expect, just the government handed out land. Just handed out land to people. They stole land from the native people and they handed it out to white people. And then the white people are like, I pulled myself up on my bootstraps. I worked hard on this farm. Like, yeah, but you got like $40,000 worth of assets just handed to you without any tax, issues. And, you use that to build your wealth. Give that to everybody and see what happens, There's actually an interesting study, maybe, you want to take a look at it. There was a study that took a specific subset of people who were homeless, and they just gave them money. They just gave them $7,500 to see what they would do with it. And interestingly enough, like they're going to go buy it, spend it on booze, or whatever else. They used it to set themselves up. Now, this special subset were people who I think they didn't have real strong mental health problems or other things like that. There are people who are homeless without those sort of added burdens, right? So let's have a look. Oh, I will change the screen, and now I'm in the corner. Hello, and I'm gonna adjust my thing again. This way. Now I'm centered. All right, right. I'll get the chat up in a second. I do see you guys. I just haven't put you on the screen because I'm running late because I was trying to figure out that stupid thing about my camera. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Study, homeless. 7,500. I think that's enough to get me where I need to go, search engine wise. Return. Yeah, basic income experiment. Yeah, let's look at that known leftist rag, the Business Insider. That bastion of left-wing perspective, Business Insider. Have a little look at this. And then I want to turn to the election. All right, so we'll go from there. All right. No, please go away. Go away. Canadian Charity recently conducted a bold social experiment, giving people experiencing homelessness a one-time cash infusion of $7,500 Canadian. So, not real money. According to the researchers, the results were beautifully surprising. The study, entitled The New Leaf Project, speaks to the power of an interim universal basic income to lift people out of poverty. A universal basic income is essentially a cash handout from the government, often for the purposes of rehabilitating those in poverty. More jurisdictions around the world are experimenting with the policy, including the U.S.'s recent trial in upstate New York and an ongoing study run by the NGO Give Directly in Kenyan villages. The Foundation for Social Change, a Vancouver-based charity, partnered with the University of British Columbia to identify 50 people between 19 and 64 years old who had recently become homeless. The recipients were identified as not having significant substance abuse or mental health issues. And I think that this is a really important caveat to keep in mind. And that is because you can't have a one-size-fits-all policy to homelessness. And I know that there are really good reasons that we can talk about for creating a universal basic income. But to kind of quote a phrase, you can't just throw money at this problem and make it go away. Giving people who have substance abuse issues money won't actually solve the problem of their substance abuse. People with mental health issues, likewise, throwing money at them isn't going to stop, suddenly cure or reduce the suffering they experience from their mental health issues. You have to deal with the substance abuse and mental health issues on their own as barriers. And maybe it's the case that the homelessness is a consequence of those, as opposed to other groups of people who don't have those issues and became homeless because they got fired or they had some other massive financial obligation that just broke them. So I think that it's really important to keep in mind that there are many paths to homelessness and there isn't just one solution. But for a certain group of people, a certain class, a cluster of people in terms of their circumstances and the reasons for their homelessness, then $7,500 seems like a really good investment if it allows, let's say, 90% or 80% of those people to break the cycle of homelessness. I mean, you could either give them $75 up front and let them sort their lives out and get on with their lives, or they can struggle and you can keep paying out things in dribs and drabs, judging them and saying, oh, you have to do this, you have to jump through these hoops, you have to do all these kinds of things in order to get a little bit of money, and all of that keeps the cycle of homelessness going. So we have to be smart. All right. Researchers studied their spending habits over 12 months and compared their outcomes to a control group who did not receive the cash payment. Those who were given the cash largely spent the money on food, rent, and transportation and moved into stable housing faster over the course of a year, according to the findings. Spending on temptation goods such as drugs, cigarettes, alcohol declined by 39% on average. Maybe because they weren't so stressed about being homeless that they had to self-medicate with anything they could get their hands on. There's an idea. And recipients were able to keep an average of $1,000 in savings, according to Canadian news outlet CBC. The cash payments saved the shelter system $8,100 per person over the course of the year. A total savings of over $500,000. It also gave some participants the chance to update their job skills. Quote, when I found out I had been accepted to receive the cash transfer, I was living in an emergency shelter trying to find a way forward, a New Leaf Project participant whose identity was kept anonymous said in a press release. Quote, the money gave me the resources I needed to get out of the shelter and push for the social program and the computer class I needed. It was an important stepping stone and it gave me a choice. It gave me a chance, unquote. Eventually, the Foundation for Social Change hopes to expand the study with a $10 million fundraising effort to deliver the same impact to many more people across Canada. Quote, homelessness can happen to anyone, unquote, Williams wrote in the study's impact statement, noting that many people are just one paycheck away from losing their homes or cars and being forced to find other ways of living. Quote, while the economic impact of homelessness costs everyone, ultimately it is the human cost that is so devastating, unquote. There you go. Not a one-size-fits-all solution, but damn, if you can give this out and actually save money, not just break even from what you would normally spend, but spend less of taxpayer money in supporting people. Hello, this makes sense. Why? Okay, so I talked a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and do my normal thing where I pop out my window so you guys can... Oh, so much to do. Hey, did you guys check out the movie review that Kevin and I did on his channel last night for International Gorillas? It was actually really funny. It's so much more fun to do the reviews than it is to watch the movies. The movies are so bad, you guys. And last night we were on a roll, so we decided to do 2 movies. We did both the movie Amerigeddon, which has Alex Jones in it. That was just wank. That was right-wing, nonstop wank. And then I was like, all right, well, let's just, are you tired yet? You want to just keep going? And Kevin's like, yeah, I'll keep going. And I was like, all right, we're going to do Manos, The Hands of Fate. And oh my God, that was so painful. It was so awful, you guys. It was so bad. I broke Kevin. I mean, as I mentioned to him after the movie was done, that in the 5, we've been friends for 5 years now. known each other online for, I think, about September of 2015. We got to know each other. And I've heard him express many emotions in that time. I've heard him express, joy and laughter, frustration, and even anger. But in doing the trash movie series, I hear, like, last night, I heard pain. I think he was physically uncomfortable sitting through Manos, The Hands of Fate. And, so that was, we see, and he also said, because, he said, he challenged me in that, it's okay. He brought Freddie got fingered, which was awful. It was freaking awful. And I said I was going to bring him some really, really bad movies. And he's like, bring it. Come on. Let's see what you got. And I've crushed his soul now twice. So, International Gorillas, he said, was so painful. I think Manos, The Hands of Fate, where it was even more painful. Oh, hey, Sean. Who else is in there? Quick, a Giant Rabbit. That's an awesome screen name. Lucky Wanderer. Hey, how you doing? All right, let's have a look at... all right. Let's talk about why Biden's going to win the popular vote by a landslide. It doesn't really matter which websites you go to. All of the polling is saying... It's not even just the polling. Let's look at the polling first. So we'll do 20 polls. And then we'll also look at early vote, which is phenomenal this year. I mean, there are states that they haven't even started allowing people to do the early vote. And the early vote this year is just, woo. Also, I saw, we'll look at a Washington Post article. They talked about the fact that after Trump attacked the post office, people shifted their behavior, as you do. And fewer people are saying they're going to vote by mail, and more people are moving to early voting to make sure that their votes actually count. So we had polls, and we had early vote 2020. If I type, okay. Early vote by party, sure, why not? And go 2020. We might not get by party because some states don't. They only have the early vote totals. They don't necessarily break it down by party identification. Whether or not you have to register with a party is a state-by-state issue. And what else I was going to look at? So I'm going to do... all right, so I'm a geek. You guys know I'm a total nerd when it comes to this stuff. And there are times that I need to find a way to make myself feel better about how things are going. And so this is really super sad. I binge these Republicans against voters against Trump videos. That's a dirty little secret. No, like a guilty pleasure. I will sometimes just sit and watch 5 or 6 of these in a row just to make myself feel better. And I'll tell you a bit more about my experience maybe with this when we get done with it, because as you guys know, I've done focus groups in the UK, and so even though I haven't done focus groups in the US, it would be very difficult to replicate our study in the US without like $1 million. But in the UK, I really had, by the end of every cycle, I have a pretty good idea of like the typical Labour voter perspective on the world, the typical Conservative voter perspective on the world. Same thing with the Lib Dems and Greens. SNP in Scotland, a little bit less than UKIP. We have a couple UKIP participants, but probably not enough to generalize. And so for me to hear Republicans talk about so that analogous, I know what it's like to talk to all my lefty friends, and I know the fights we have on the left and the things we agree on in principle on the left and our sort of worldview. What's fascinating to me about Republicans against Trump is that they are maintaining a Republican worldview and framing, but adjusting their values to support Joe Biden. And so I have some thoughts on that. Also, people tend to I'm going to say this and then we'll go back and look at the polls. Trump is moving people to the left. He is. I mean, we heard this in 2016 because right-wing people like Sargon and Tim Pool and anybody else who was commenting on American politics would just accuse anybody who didn't express the view of a far-right, jerk as, oh, you're driving people to the right, you're pushing people to the right. Fact is that for the last 4 years, and it really accumulating now, Trump has moved a lot of people to the left. That doesn't mean he's made Republicans not be Republicans. They've just adapted their value system to accommodate their that reaction against open bigotry or whatever else they see that they don't like to fit within their Republican worldview. So the Lincoln Project is not going to turn into a bunch of Democrats. They are going to stay Republicans. The Lincoln Project definitely is looking to make allies and inroads in with more conservative, small c conservative Democrats who might sort of support the economic agenda but be anti-choice or whatever else. The Lincoln Project is looking to move into more centrist independent voters because they are looking to create a new Republican Party. So don't ever think that because we're allying with Republicans, they're going to stop being Republicans. David Frum is never going to be a Democrat. Steve Schmidt, Michael Steele, all these people are going to stay Republicans, but they're going to modify their political positions in order to recenter where the center-right is in America. Because there's this big gap. If we think about the left-right spectrum, which we've talked about as being problematic, not problematic, but fuzzy. The left-right spectrum is obviously measuring something, but what it is, it's difficult to say because it means different things to different people. And if you look at where the most right-leaning Democratic voter is on that political spectrum, and then where your typical Trump supporter is, current people who identify as a Trump supporter and Republican, there is a big space on the right. There's a wide open gap of people who are feeling left behind by their party, who right now feel it's more patriotic to vote for Joe Biden than to not vote or to vote for Trump. But those people aren't going to move, they're going to stay where they are politically. And the question for Lincoln Project and going forward is, can those people be organized into a reformed Republican Party that will be a replacement for the only option that currently exists in an organized fashion, which is Trump's far-right extremist party. Okie dokie, that was, God, Christy, you can talk. Woman, you can go on. Don't have any problems there. I want to make you guys bigger. No, that's, and I'm not quite sure how to do that. Oh, I think I have to do it on this window over here. Boop. Yep, boop, boop. Now you can see your own text. All right, before I go on this, I will see what you guys are saying. So what are y'all saying in the chat? Bootstraps are meant to represent social programs that lift people up, thus people are lifted up by their bootstraps. Yeah, the bootstraps phrase, the people who lift themselves up by their bootstraps tend to be, like middle-class white people who got a pretty good education in an area that was funded by property taxes of other white people. They rode to school on a bus that was free, and their public education they didn't pay for. And then they got a grant to go to college from the federal government, and then maybe they got a small business loan from their state government, and then they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. Uh-huh. All right. Okie doke. Let's see. Sean now says, Lucky Wanderer electors how electors should vote is a decision for the states within themselves. States' internal maps to their policies in national elections so parties wouldn't break their power base. International guerrillas. Yeah, as we said in the show, the trash movies, who knew that we would look fondly back on White Chicks as the best movie we've watched so far. I have some pretty good weird movies we could review. Weird stuff. Okay, especially anything on YouTube is really helpful because it reduces the number of screenshots we have to do. I mean, at some point we might get some sort of copyright, but if International Gorillas has been up without all of our commentary on top of it, I think we're okay for a while. Sargon's gone off the deep end. Yeah, I mean, I thought about doing a program on Sargon, and then I decided he wasn't important enough for me right now. Like, I didn't want to actually have to think about countering him today, so I just decided to talk about why Joe Biden's going to have a landslide victory in the popular vote. The Electoral College is undemocratic. Yeah, it's meant to be. The Electoral College is undemocratic if you think of democracy as rule by the people. And one of the things that is constantly a theme in the Constitution, Brett, is that the founders were trying to avoid majoritarian, like just pure sort of like majoritarianism. They wanted some way of protecting the rights of the minorities. And as someone who grew up in a rural area, I mean, I can understand it. I don't relate to it, but I can understand the rationale of people in rural areas not wanting all of the decisions to be made by people who don't live like them and don't have their experiences. Of course, the reverse works as well. And the other thing that the founders really feared was the passions of the people. They did fear mob rule. If you want to look at it, quite bluntly, there are all of these barriers that the founders put between the democratic legitimacy one gets in an election and the actual process of distributing power. So although the people get to vote, that power is then handed over to the electors, who are supposed to be initially, I think, designated by the state legislatures. Now, the state legislatures, in the original conception of how our Constitution worked, were only ever going to be white, propertied men over like the age of 30 or so. And so they were always felt like there was this, it's an elitism. It was an elitist check on, like just farmers and other people who were the great unwashed masses and whatever else. There was always that sort of like elite barrier to do their better judgment. I mean, even the Senate initially was not directly elected. You had the House of Representatives that had direct democracy in terms of who they sent to Congress. But the state legislatures in each state were the ones who elected the U.S. senators. And we needed, I think it was the 11th Amendment or whatever else, to have a direct election of U.S. senators. So you see that the House was really the only place for direct democracy in the original conception. And then both the Senate and the White House were, there was these filters. Like you could think of the people elected the people who went to the state legislature, and the state legislatures elected the senators. Well, that's kind of like the way the people elected, they had the popular vote for the Electoral College, but then the delegates were the one who actually voted for the president. So this is, you can say it's undemocratic. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that assessment, but it's because they did have this fear of just the rule of the majority and wanting to protect the rights of the minority. Okay, so we'll come back to the soothing vote Republicans against Trump in a minute. Let's have a look at the current polls. The Guardian actually has a good state-by-state poll. So back in 2016, Hillary Clinton was facing a very different election from Joe Biden. And I think one of the most important differences between because Clinton, when she left office as Secretary of State, her you can go back and check me, her approval ratings were like in the 60s. She had a positive approval rating in the 60s. It was always known that she was going to be the front runner for the Democratic nomination in 2016. Always, always, always. Everyone expected it, as did the Republicans. And that is why for 2 years they spent taxpayer money talking about Benghazi. They did how many studies into Benghazi? It was all a waste of time. It was all a waste of money. It was all a waste of taxpayer resources and time that Congress could have spent on solving actual freaking problems, but they don't care about that. We see with Mike Lee's comment about democracy, they only want to attain their goal. And let's just be clear on what the Republican goal is. Now, I'm not saying every single Republican in America realizes this. I think there's a lot of dupes who buy into their rhetoric. But people like Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Kevin McCarthy, Paul Ryan, they all have one goal in mind, and that is to preserve white men's power, especially Christian white men, by establishing one-party rule and tilting the table by gerrymandering and voter suppression and stacking the courts to rubber stamp their gerrymandering and voter suppression so that it doesn't matter how many Democrats there are. It doesn't matter how many people don't want a Republican, Republicans in power. It is structurally impossible for them to lose. And we see this with the woman in Kansas who basically said, wasn't it? Kansas, draw lines, to get that seat. I think this should be enough. So go to news. I can't remember. Maybe it was in Kansas. Maybe it was another state. But there was a woman, you might have seen the coverage. I didn't pay attention to it. But she basically said, admits, let me try this, admit to gerrymandering. Maybe this will do. Mandering, not E. Restrictive voting laws, is this it? The Republicans are doing a war on democracy. Mike Lee, we're not a democracy. Democracy isn't the objective. Liberty, peace, and prosperity are. Doesn't matter if you're free, as long as you have their version of liberty, domestic, like the suppression of civil unrest and prosperity. And then, distorting the role. Yeah, this is it. Is it? Lauren Culp, Republican candidate. Anyway, she basically said if we can preserve our 2/3 majority in the state legislature. I can't remember the state or the woman's name, but I remember the quote. Like, if we in this next election can retain our 2/3 majority in the state legislature, we can draw the lines in such a way that we can eliminate the one Democratic seat that we have just by redrawing the lines. They're traitors. They're absolutely traitors. So anyway, I keep getting, hi Rory Katz, I keep getting distracted, and I wanted to only go an hour, and I'm probably halfway through at least from babbling on. I'm to yep, exactly a half hour. I'm a really good internal clock. All right, so let's look. Now, just because Biden's going to win the popular vote is no guarantee that he is going to win the election for reasons we've just discussed. However, it is it's so clear at this point that Biden is going to get the popular vote by probably a larger margin than Clinton did. She won by 2 point something %, and she got 3 million more. And Biden's is going to be much higher. So yeah, the Republicans had 2 years to basically use taxpayer money and the media coverage that generated in their hearings to trash her reputation and generate and pull her positives down, basically. This time around, in 2020, they didn't really know who was going to be the Democratic nominee. Nobody knew who was going to be the Democratic nominee. And so 2 things hampered their efforts to replicate 2016. And basically what Donald Trump wants to do more than anything is just rerun 2016. That's why he's desperate for some sort of report to drop. That's why, he's mad at the Republicans for not doing more to trash Biden in their committees like they did with Hillary Clinton for him. He just thinks if he can rerun 2016, he'll get the same outcome. But 2020 is not 2016. Florida, which obviously is a huge state, also oftentimes razor thin margins. Florida is constantly a squeaker. And we've seen in Florida this time around some really important things. One is an effort to restore voting rights to people who had felonies, who had served their time. There was, of course, I've detailed this before, the Republicans said, oh, it's not enough that you actually serve your time. We're going to put an extra burden that you also have to pay all your fees and fines and victim restitution as well before you can vote again. Anything they can do to stop people from voting. And so there's an entire project now that's gotten sort of like over 30,000 people's fines and other court whatever costs and everything else to paid off so that they are eligible to vote again. That enough, 30,000 could be enough. But then there's also the fact that Trump is just hemorrhaging support with seniors in a way that, like, his numbers are, well, I'll maybe have a look at it next in the Washington Post article. Actually, let me get that up. Go Washington Post. I was listening to the article this morning as I was getting ready. I have a great, do I have it? Yeah. I just want to, I'm not getting paid for this, but, there is an app I absolutely love, and I highly recommend. I read a lot of news articles, and I read a lot of them on my phone. And honestly, just staring at my screen for hours, it makes my eyes tired, and it doesn't make them bleed. That would be an exaggeration. But I downloaded an app called Text Reader. TEXT, and you can't really see it. READR. It's available on the Google Play Store. I'm assuming it's available in other places as well. And it will just read out your articles for you, which is great because a lot of times, like I said, I don't want to stare at my screen. I even have the blue light filter on it. Let me just give you a little, and I picked the British voice because I find, but you can do other accents as well. So I'll just show you what.
Tim Miller.
Nope. All right, start at the beginning.
Trump's closing argument, the unfairness never ends. Image, featured image. With less than a month until the election, President Donald Trump took an extended break from treating his own case of the Rona, managing the country's pandemic, and insulting his counterparty in his bizarre negotiation over whether or not to provide economic relief to American families and businesses.
And so, I'll just take a long-form New York Times article or whatever else, and I can put this on, and then I can set my phone down and brush my teeth. Or I can make a cup of coffee. Or I can even do something else. I can be on Twitter while I'm listening. I love it. The Washington Post has that feature on at least my paid subscription. They have their own reader. Although it's so funny the way the Washington Post one, they haven't programmed it to say coronavirus, and so it's always coronavirus, which just makes me laugh. Anyway, right. So we'll have a look at this article that I had read out to me as I got ready for the show. All right, so first let's take a look at the polls. Now of course, what really counts is not what people think, because you can phone anyone and ask them for an opinion, and that costs them nothing in terms of their time or effort. All they have to do is agree to take your call and tell you honestly where they are right now. And that's all it costs them. However, obtaining a ballot, filling it out, filling out the forms properly, knowing where your drop-off box is, or finding the right envelope to post it, posting it in time for it to make it, or going to the drop box, or even organizing your day around going to the polls and possibly waiting in line. All of those things cost more than giving an opinion over the phone to somebody or on an internet, response form. So what people think and what people do are different. However, if we figure that these numbers are pretty much right, it would be Florida is looking very good for Joe Biden. Now, of course, it also looked good for Al Gore until an entire county made up disproportionately of people who are Jewish voted for Pat Buchanan, who was anti-Semitic, probably by mistake, and Al Gore could have won that county, but just let it go, Christy. You never know what's going to happen with the actual ballots themselves, right? But if you're getting to a point where you're at 3%, 4%, you can afford to lose quite a lot of your ballots being challenged or even being wrong and still have enough a cushion of turnout, people who did turn out to vote, to take it. I think Florida looks really good. I mean, Florida might actually go this time for the Democrats, and normally it's a squeaker in which Republicans win. So I'm feeling pretty good about Florida. Pennsylvania as well. Pennsylvania is actually, Trump is really desperate to win there. He's really looking to jack up the vote in the rural areas. However, as we're going to look at it from the Republican voters against Trump, he just doesn't have the same advantage either with seniors or with whites that he had last time, or with men, if I'm being perfectly honest. Trump has always had a gender gap problem. This time it's a gender gap chasm, and in addition to that, he's not outperforming Biden with men. He's not kind of making up in the demos that he dominated or allowed him to squeak by in 2016. We'll look in those crosstabs a little bit more later. Ohio, I don't really care about Ohio. I mean, not personally. Look, if we don't win Ohio, but we get Florida and Pennsylvania, you pick up that in Arizona and Nevada and Michigan and Wisconsin, bye Ohio, don't care anymore, don't need you, bye-bye. So, I mean, if it flips, brilliant, but I'm personally not putting it in the column of states that Biden kind of needs to win to get him over the top. Michigan, again, a state that Trump really needs to win. Biden's been hovering over 50%. And that's important because one of the other advantages that Trump had in 2016 that he doesn't have in 2020 is a strong green candidate who is pulling people from the left. There isn't a Jill Stein. I don't even know what the name of the green candidate for president is this time. Honestly, I don't. And the Green Party is failing to get on the ballot. Now that might mean that those voters just won't vote. Who knows? It's kind of hard to say. Simply not having the Green Party on the ballot doesn't mean that those voters are going to go for the Democrats. However, it does. I mean, they can still go in and write that person's name on the ballot. It just takes more effort and it feels less efficacious. But people who vote in green, they don't vote green because they think the Green Party is going to be elected. So it's not a tactical vote. It's not a political, I think I want my party, I'm voting to put my party in power. They tend to be more idealistic. It tends to be more expressive emotionally. I'm voting for the Greens because I don't like these other two parties. And so you're not necessarily going to see people voting for the Dems just because the Greens aren't on the ticket. However, if Biden is polling above 50%, that's 50% plus one is all you need. And if you have multiple candidates, what you're getting instead is a plurality. So once you cross that 50% threshold in your voting intention, that's a big threshold at that point, because you've kind of moved beyond that plurality where votes on the margins can count. North Carolina, which I'm loving seeing all these places go blue. I really am. Makes me very excited. I got a little bit southern there. North Carolina, Biden's tipping up next to 50%. Apparently, thank you, Pandanus Rex, for the update, and also for the watching International Gorillas in preparation for our trash movie show. Howie Hawkins. Oh, would you like to swing on a star? Oh, that's Hudson Hawk, a different movie. Is the nominee. Arizona. Okay, so North Carolina would be amazing. Again, this is, for me, North Carolina isn't one of those states where I would put, so in the column of really Biden needs to win, I would put North Carolina more on the icing on the cake. So I think between a Pennsylvania or Florida, Arizona or Nevada, and then Michigan and Wisconsin are kind of the 6 states that I think Biden tilts toward winning. And if he can wrap up those, he's on his path already. So he doesn't need to get Ohio. He doesn't need to get Iowa if he gets the combinations of the ones that he's doing very well in. I can sing, though. Yeah, I've been known to. Arizona, I do think he's going to do well in. And you can see here he's up, 48.8%. One of the reasons I think that Arizona is a state that Biden can count on is because it has a lot of older people in it. And older people are super reliable voters. They're super, super reliable voters. And because they're skewing toward older, and they're also more skewed toward white, but then there's also a strong Hispanic population that's not Cuban Americans. I think Arizona has a lot of the things a lot of people you can put in a combination to get to a Biden victory. So I would expect Arizona to go for Biden as well. Wisconsin is now getting out of reach for Trump. Depends a little bit on whether or not some of these voter suppression efforts work out. I don't know if you saw or not, but initially, I fucking hate Republicans. Initially, the city of Milwaukee had worked out a plan with the local sports, I think through the Bucks, the Milwaukee Bucks, to allow the stadium where they play, or the athletic center or whatever it's called, where the Milwaukee Bucks play, to be used as a voting station, as a polling station. And of course the Republicans sued and said because it had not been designated a polling station early enough, that if anybody voted there, they would file in court to make sure that no vote that was cast at that location would count. They just don't want people to vote. No, they want white people who like them to vote and nobody else. But the thing about this is, this has always been like the white supremacist agenda. This has been the same motivation since Jim Crow. It's just now it's not limited to the South. It's not limited to practices with high, 30% more Black American populations. They've just taken it nationwide. They've taken Jim Crow nationwide. And again, why? Because they want to protect the power of white men. And not all white men, hashtag not all white men, but white people still benefit from that white supremacist system. It's still easier for me and my family to vote in Wisconsin in a rural area than it is for people to vote in Milwaukee. And it's not my dad's fault or my mom's fault that they live in a system that makes it easier for them. But if we as white people don't stand up and call this S out, then it won't stop. We have the power to say stop far more than the disenfranchised groups, because the whites who want to maintain that power structure will try to discount them as whiners. But if it's coming from inside the house, if the calls for, voting revolution and how we do things are coming from the people who are benefiting the most, that undercuts their claims. And that's why white people need to be good allies and step up and challenge white people who want to impose these kinds of undemocratic structures in order to preserve white men's power, ultimately. All right. So Wisconsin, again, Iowa, don't care. I'm just kind of done with Ohio and Iowa. I'm just kind of done with them. Now, if we get it, and especially if Joni Ernst's seats flips, yay, I'll be happy, but I'm not counting on them. I don't put them in the must-win category. I would put Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida, Arizona, Nevada. I put those more in the must-win category, but you can put, again, I don't need them in my combination in order to see a Biden win. And in terms of the national polls, the big difference between 2016, let me pull up 2016 polling averages. I think Real Clear Politics, and we'll go 2016. You'll see that in 2016, the electorate was a lot more volatile. There were more undecided people, and even if the undecided voters didn't like Clinton or Biden, they were at least persuadable. There were people who were still flipping between the two candidates. What about Iowa or Ohio? Yeah, let's just combine those two states together, right? Rolling average. I want to see the chart. Here we go. All right. Notice, okay, just look at this. Right? So people are saying, oh, look at this in the, October 9th, whatever. At this time last year, Clinton was leading. It was 47.5 to 42.9, and he still ended up winning. Yeah, but Trump had actually gone ahead or matched Clinton multiple times over the course of the race. So he was ahead there. Well, at the beginning of the year, he climbed up there in May. He had a slight lead on her in the averages. He spiked up here. I guess that's probably a Republican convention, I'm guessing. Got a good convention bounce from that. And that dropped off we call that the discount rate, right? That dropped off super fast. But he got pretty close to her again, 44, that was 1 point difference. Here, they're like, I thought that's about 3-point difference. But what was this? He was within, like a point and a half. He was within a point and a half of her in November. And people waited till November to vote. The number of votes cast before the election in 2016 was less than 1 million. If I'm remembering this from the Ari Melber segment, I saw it correctly. And we'll look at how many people have voted now compared to 2016. So see the bouncy, 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 bounce. Now let's look at that Biden tracker. Look at this. Completely different races. Completely different races. Even if you want to say the numbers aren't that far off, Trump, the closest he got to Biden was somewhere in May. And ever since then, he's been drifting down. And Biden, he's been sort of like, drifting downwards. He's kind of, let's see, his high point, let's go from the beginning of this year. So Trump at his height. This is the highest number we can find in the averages. 46%. And he's now currently at 41. Right? So he's his low was 40. His high was 46. He's ever since Corona he's been going down. And he's at 41 now. I mean, he's just bubbling along. I mean, these numbers look much bigger than they probably should because we're only looking at like a portion of the total table. If this went to 100, it would probably almost look like a slightly declining straight line down without some of the variation, the movement in the numbers. By comparison, Biden started out 48%, and yes, he's now, his lowest was 47%, and now he's bobbling up around 50, 51. He's going, it would be basically almost like a straight line with a slight upward tip to it. We don't see this sort of same voter volatility. We don't see people making up their minds or changing their minds over time. So there's a lot of reasons, even if the numbers are the same, it's the stuff underneath is nothing like 2016. The other thing I wanted to talk about, a day ago, New York Times. I just subscribed to the New York Times, which I'm a little bit torn about because sometimes they are terrible. They're really crap. But on the other hand, they have really good reporting. That reporting on Trump's taxes was phenomenal, and that sunk in. Some polling already I saw. It was in the Washington Post thing I listened to. People know that Trump did not pay much in taxes. That hit. Like the $750, that's an easy number to remember. And people also know what they paid in taxes last year. Their return might have been less than Donald Trump paid in taxes. And the thing that voters, the number one predictor of how people are going to vote is how they feel about the economy. Ultimately, how you feel about your household and your household's economy, your household economy and the national economy, but really your household. And seems to be the most important thing. If people are like, well, I don't like him and he might be guilty of sexual assault and he might be a liar, he might be a traitor, but, I'm making a bit more money than I was 4 years ago, so I don't want to rock the boat. People suck. Like, I know that for a lot of people, politics is not an abstract thing. It's like, does this affect my life in a good way or a bad way? And that ultimately is how they vote, but I just wish we were less than reptilian about this. Okay, so I don't know if I haven't read this, so I'm not entirely sure where we get to the numbers. Let's see. Do they have some numbers? Madison, Wisconsin, thousands of people have gone to the parks to deliver their ballots. In Saturday voting festivals, Republicans tried to stop that too. Milwaukee Facebook feeds are inundated with selfies of Democrats inserting ballots into drop boxes. Of all the many battlegrounds within Wisconsin, perhaps the most pivotal state in November, I think it's Pennsylvania now, the motherlode of absentee ballots is coming in Dane County, which of course is what Republicans are going to go after the most because they just want to discount votes. They don't want to compete for them. As of Friday, the number of submitted ballots there amounted to more than 30 36% of the county's total 2016 election vote. That figure is 10 percentage points higher than in any other county in the state. So for those of you who don't understand Wisconsin politics, it's okay if you don't live there, it doesn't matter. But there is basically a seesaw that is the two strongholds in the state. The Democratic stronghold is Dane County, and that's the seat of government. That is where the state capital of Madison is, and it's in surrounding areas. Absolutely the highest percentage of Democrats anywhere concentrated in the state, and about equal population. And then you get Milwaukee too. I don't want to discount Milwaukee, but Dane County is just, they tend to have, it's more affluent, it's more college educated, and as a consequence, we know that those two things also predict voter turnout. Poor people sometimes have more stuff to worry about than whether or not they get to the ballot, or they might not be able to because of work reasons, whatever else. Right? So it's Milwaukee and Dane County, but Dane County is like that hippie white liberal kind of place. I mean, I don't want to be disparaging, but I'm trying to give you a sense of the vibe. And then the counter to that are the WOW counties, Waukesha, Ozaki, and another W county. Now, the suburban counties, they're suburban counties of Milwaukee because of white flight. All right? Are you already picturing kind of who these people are? Big yards, probably have like a landscaping company. They have more bedrooms than they could ever possibly sleep in. And so there are fewer of them, but they're across 3 counties, and they kind of population-wise balance out Dane County. So if you can turn out Dane County and the WOW counties don't turn out, that's going to be a Democratic election. And so in the Wisconsin Republican heartland, the suburban counties that ring Milwaukee, the absentee turnout is only at about the state average so far. And in the dozens of rural counties where President Trump won huge victories 4 years ago, ballots are being returned at a far slower rate than the state's Democratic areas, because Trump is shooting himself in the foot. Now, why is this important? So now away from the article. Why is this important from a campaign point of view? As someone who worked on campaigns, I can tell you that an early vote is a banked vote. Someone who votes early doesn't have to be reminded to ever vote again. And that means that you can concentrate your world of people that you need to remind to vote, or to help to get out the vote, or to knock on their doors to tell them that it's election day and offer them a ride to the polls, gets smaller and smaller and smaller, which means you can put more resources into the more difficult people to get out the door, right? And so we want to bank votes, as many as possible, because it's a better use of our resources to chase people who haven't voted than to chase people who have, right? And so if you've got 1 million people that you need to contact on election day, that's a lot more work than if 36% of them have already voted, right? So it's just a matter of resources. Right. Democratic enthusiasm to turnout is not limited to Wisconsin. Ballot return data from heavily Democratic cities like Pittsburgh, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and Tampa, Florida, and the long lines of cars waiting at Houston Arena to drop off ballots are signs that many voters have followed through on their intention to cast ballots well ahead of November 3rd. There is still time for Republicans to catch up in many places, and they are expected to vote in strong numbers in person on Election Day, and untold numbers of absentee ballots could be rejected for failing to fulfill the requirements like witness signatures, or could face legal challenges. But in states that have begun accepting absentee ballots, Democrats have built up what appears to be a sizable advantage after years when Republicans were usually more likely to vote by mail. Tim Bonnier, the chief executive of Target Smart, a Democratic data firm, said his models showed Democrats with a 10-point advantage among the 2,750 first-time voters nationwide who had already cast ballots, and an 18-point lead among the 1.1 million sporadic voters who had already voted. At the same point in the 2016 cycle, Mr. Bonner said that his model showed Democrats with a 1.6-point advantage among sporadic voters. It went from let me repeat those numbers just to let them sink in, because we all need to kind of calm down a little bit from the whole, the polls might show them ahead, but don't believe the polls lies, just blah, 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 blah. Like, I get it, but let's have some balance, all right? Let's be emotionally balanced about this. We are doing well. On the Democratic side of the field, We are doing well, and we can kind of enjoy this a bit. 2016, 1.6 point advantage among sporadic voters. 2020, 18-point lead among the 1.1 million sporadic voters. Democrats are highly engaged, and they are turning out. Republicans can't say the same. And when you see those things like, oh, look at this, Republicans are more enthusiastic about Trump, and Democrats aren't so enthusiastic about Biden, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about who you're enthusiastic for. Are you enthusiastic about voting? That's the important thing. And what we can see is, for whatever Republicans say about how much they love Donald Trump and how excited they are to vote for Donald Trump, it is Democrats who are turning out. We are the ones with the enthusiasm on our side. And we might not attribute that to like, oh, Joe Biden is just like the perfect candidate I've always wanted to vote for. I've been waiting my whole life to vote for Joe Biden. No. They see that their democracy is on the line, that people are trying to steal their votes, that we have a racist in the White House, that we have an international threat, that we have a guy who doesn't care about the pandemic, whatever your reasons are. People are motivated to go out and protect democracy by voting for Biden. So, right, across the country, voters in states with little history of casting their ballots weeks before election days have embraced the practice as the nation grapples with the pandemic. As of Saturday, more than 8.8 million ballots had already been received by election officials in the 30 states that have made the data available. In 5 states, including the battleground states of Wisconsin and Minnesota, the number of ballots returned is already more than 20% of the entire 2016 turnout. And my vote isn't even counted in there yet because mine just got posted with a tracking number this week. Imagine 20% of the people who showed up on election day, they've already voted. And most of those, I'm going to say 80-20, 70-30 break for Dems. Those votes are in. We don't have to worry about those people. And we're still 3 weeks out. I mean, this is, like I said, Biden is going to win public, like a national vote. He is going to win in a landslide. The Wisconsin ballot numbers illustrate how much voting has changed in the pandemic era. In the 2016 election, 146,294 Wisconsinites voted by mail. I was one of them. Overseas ballot. And 666,035 others voted at in-person early voting sites. Right? So in total, that's like, let's say 800,000, less than 1 million people. Yeah. Fewer than 1 million voters, but less than 1,000 votes cast, right? In the current general election, 464,987 people have already voted absentee as of Friday, and the early voting sites they don't open until the 20th of October. So people, basically, as many people have already voted absentee, like as voted early last time around. These are explosive numbers. I can't talk about what a dramatic shift this is in terms of voter behavior. It's absolutely huge. And the other great thing about this, let me tell you the other great thing about early voting and early absentee or early in-person voting. One of the problems that we have often in under-resourced counties or towns where they are running elections is, and this has happened more times than I care to think, but the voting locations will run out of ballots on election day. They will have printed off the number of ballots they needed for the last election, because we have this tendency of just thinking whatever we did last time will work again this time. And then if there is a surge in voting, and it's also oftentimes the people who don't vote on a regular basis who turn out in a high turnout election, and those locations they don't have enough ballots, you end up having people wait for hours on end to get more ballots printed off. Now, if those people, if a third of the county or a third of the people in that area have already voted and they print off the same number of ballots, you're not going to have that problem of there not being enough ballots available. So all of this is better for Democratic turnout. Municipal clerks can begin tabulating absentee ballots once the polls open on election day. As a result, the full results from early voting in Wisconsin, as well as some other states, may not be known until after November 3rd. I don't think it's going to be that. They don't have to wait until 8 o'clock they can start from 7 o'clock in the morning. And I can also tell you that they might just have somebody like who, when there's like a slow period, you know, just feeding the absentee ballots into, so like my absentee ballot goes to my county clerk or town clerk. It doesn't just go to some sort of like general location where they're going to be feeding it in. And so if the poll workers get there and it's a slow day, and they don't have anyone, they can just feed the absentee overseas whatever ballots in and start counting them. So I kind of think there's a bit of an over-exaggeration about how long it's going to take to get the results. So as a consequence, you can see that the left is very focused on getting their people to request absentee ballots and return them. Democrats are in the lead as the ballots are returned, no doubt. And I think between this super stable Biden lead, where did it go? All right, this super stable Biden lead, highly motivated Democratic voters, and also people who are like these Republicans against Trump are highly motivated voters. They are going to get to the polls for sure. And I think as a consequence, whether or not Trump is able to pull some legal maneuvers, that has left to be seen. It depends on the margins of the state. But right now, Biden's going to win huge. He's going to win a huge landslide in the popular vote. All right. What if your absentee ballot is valid for some inane thing like signature verification? Can you re-vote? No. I'm not entirely sure of how the process works. So one thing is, the way that it works in Wisconsin, because the one thing we're not talking about, I mean, I don't know all of the Republican challenges, but if you probably won't remember, but the Republicans under Scott Walker, with Scott Walker when he was governor, changed the ability of a candidate to request a recount. So if you have an initial vote, like my vote goes in and the clerk looks at it and it looks like it's fine. This is my understanding of how it works. They will just put my ballot through and it will count toward Biden, Harris, and Jess King, who I also voted for Congress. Now, recount laws in Wisconsin. Now, it used to be that a candidate with less than 5%, if you lost by less than 5% or 3% or something, you could ask for a recount. And the recount is just what it sounds like. You get out all the ballots and you start going through them one by one. And you've got a lawyer for the Republicans, a lawyer for the Democrats, a lawyer for the Greens if they want to be there, the Libertarians. And they physically go through them and the lawyers will go, oh, stop. I want to look at this one. We want to challenge this on some basis. And so they'll pull that one out. Right. So as long as I do, the clerk sees that I filled out the form appropriately, it should just go in initially. However, because of, the Republicans didn't like this, so they changed it. And now it's basically, you have to lose by less than 1% or lower. So if Trump loses by 4%, I don't know that he'd be able to request a recount in Wisconsin. So we'll have to see how that goes. So that is the state of things. And of course, every state is different. So we're really going to have to wait and see. After this video, please watch. What is this, Rory Katz? What are you guys putting out? It doesn't work for me. Anyway. All right. I think I'm going to wrap it up. I've got a lot to do today. I may have a patron hangout. I don't know. I have to get back to them, see what people said. Then I got my D&D on my D&D channel, D&D Gaming with Christy. We're doing the rest of the dungeon crawl from Acquisitions Incorporated, which I don't have the book here, and see if my character, my party lives. Okay. What is this? She literally must respond verbally anytime someone calls her name, which makes her bad at hide. I don't know what you guys are talking about. So I would love to see DC and Puerto Rico become states, but I know Puerto Ricans have voted in the past and it's not always been like a clear cut, yes, we want to be part of the US. So we'll have to see. I mean, they have their autonomy. If you do need a little bit of, like I said, therapy, should we just walk? Oh, here we go. We'll watch a couple of these and then we'll wrap it up. Yep. I love these. And again, from a position of somebody on the left, these are not going to be the kinds of rationales and understandings that we connect with. It's also important to note that it doesn't matter that we don't connect with them. It's the fact that they connect with it. There are going to be people on the right. There are going to be Republicans. The question is, where can we find the common grounds to come together on things that we know are going to benefit other people and benefit the country? And voting Trump out is one of them. Oh, a cat. Okay. All right. So here we go. Oh, you guys need a sound on. Oh, by the way, he's got a lot of background noise, so just be prepared for that. Okie dokie. I'll try to turn it down if it's too loud. Cats. You're talking about cats.
There's once a moment in time.
Ooh, I'll just turn on subtitles because that's a bit difficult, and I'll make it bigger. There we go.
Where I would have been a Trump voter. But as of this moment, after last night's debate, per se, the president has lost any hope of my vote. I believe the president, by not condemning white supremacism when asked to do it just right in front of him, he refused to condemn it, and his condemnation today doesn't excuse for last night's cowardice. And I believe the president is not fit for office, and he is openly inviting racists to vote for him because he believes that is how he will win. Hopefully not. That's why I urge other Republicans to vote against him.
So that's kind of unusual. If I'm going to be honest, I'd say 60 to 70% of this channel is older white people, mostly guys. And if you want to know why Trump is losing with seniors, this channel is the thing to watch to understand it. So let's just pick an old white guy. Yep, let's go Matthew here.
Hi, my name is Matt, and I'm a registered Republican from New Jersey. And I've now decided that in 2020, there are no Republicans. There are only Americans. And I am voting for the first time Democrats across the board. After listening to Donald Trump the last few months and those debates, I've just had it with these guys. I mean, this guy can't even protect himself or the White House. He's contaminated the whole place because of his utter and reckless disregard for coronavirus. It's unbelievable. And then to hear Mike Pence, where he can't even agree to the peaceful transfer of power, it's just beyond the pale. Are we even living in America? Nothing is more important than the right to vote. And to undermine it, to call it fraudulent, to say it's all rigged unless Donald Trump wins, it's just outrageous. And now to call his militia, stand by and be on the ready. Now we have the FBI, they just arrested 6 the white supremacist militia guys trying to kidnap the governor of Michigan. Why? Because she wanted everyone to wear masks? What's going on? Just had it. Get out there and vote. Okay, this isn't a banana republic. Your vote will be safe. Just get out there. Turn in your ballot or go to the polls. Do whatever you got to do, but get these guys out of here. I mean, this guy, a law and order guy, Donald Trump, you won't even release your tax returns. If you're the law and order guy, turn over your tax returns so we know whether or not you're a criminal. And that's all we want to know. What are you afraid of? Just all this guy knows how to do is to torch the Constitution every single day. Get out the fire hose and let's wash these guys out, every single one of them. In 2020, there are no Republicans, there are Americans. And this American is voting for Joe Biden and Democrats across the board this time around. Thank you, and God bless America. That's all.
So one of the things I've noticed from watching this is it's very much like a white perspective. There is a, sometimes they mention racial disparities, But otherwise, it's really, I mean, it's coming from a sort of suburban, affluent, oftentimes, like religiously grounded, this fairy tale notion of America that they've been told and that they believe about the country being challenged by Trump. A lot of coronavirus stuff with the seniors. So let's just keep going. We already had this guy. Oh, here's a, let's see. Let's scroll down a little bit. Yep. Lifelong Republican voting for Biden. Again, it's especially the old white guys that fascinate me. Absolutely. So.
Hello, my name is Jim Jackson, and I was an active Republican for 52 years. This year, however, I'm going to vote for the most reliable, the most sincere candidate running for president, and that is Joe Biden. I believe in what Joe says. I think the most important comment to come out of the debate the other night was, you can't fix the economy unless you contain the virus. And as a 73-year-old, my wife and I are at very high risk here, so this is of great concern to us. I believe that Joe has a very decisive public health and economic response to the pandemic. He has a very clear-cut and specific plan to restore trust and credibility and common purpose. Also to mount an effective national emergency response to eliminate the cost barriers, to help the hardest hit workers, and to rally the world to confront this crisis, and finally to restore planning for future crises. I think he showed that in the Obama administration of his work with the H1N1 virus, and I believe he can do that again. So when you go to the polls, or when you submit your ballot, please consider Joe Biden. I think he's the most sincere, the most honest, and the most reliable candidate that's running for president.
All right, one more old white guy, and then we're going to wrap it up.
I voted for Trump in 2016.
What? I didn't vote on... she's also like a senior.
My name is Jim Jackson.
Here we go.
I voted
for
Trump.
Oh, that's, sorry, Now News. It's a different channel. Let me go back.
Hello, my name is...
Yes, I consume these like they're water. Like, glug, 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 glug. Leroy wants Republicans to join him. And when we talk about the gender gap, right? This is why Biden is actually pulling even with Trump when it comes to older white people, because Trump is just failing them.
Hello, Republicans. My name is Leroy, and I'm from Utah. I am asking my fellow Republicans to join me in the fight to keep America alive. I want our nation to be a great place to live, a land to be proud of. It would be a privilege to live in a country where the rule of law is respected and enforced, regardless of wealth or political position. It is marvelous to see the press express ideas in a free and open way.
You see how like they live in this, I mean, I'm not criticizing them, I'm just reflecting back. There's this very abstract notion of good and America being good and law and order. It's not about their lived experience with the state, because they've got their white privilege, like greasing the wheels of all their interactions. They don't have the experience of police brutality or harassment or anything like that. And so it's a very different way of framing the ideal of America in these videos. This channel is called Republican Voters Against Trump. There are like hundreds of these.
I'd like us to be able to engage in peaceful protests without fear of arbitrary seizure or violence. I want to live in a country that values my life, my personal liberty, and my happiness, regardless of religion or race. I would truly enjoy being in a land which is inclusive of everyone, including immigrants and refugees. I want our leaders to appreciate and respect those serving in the armed forces. I am thrilled when I see glorious landscapes which are protected by guardian federal agencies and shielded from poisonous wastes. It is vital to have clean air to breathe and pure water to drink.
30 seconds left.
I would love to live in a nation which is trusted by its international allies, a country which is a beacon to all lands because of its respect for truth and its empathy for those who are suffering. As a citizen of our cherished country, I am so happy to be able to support candidates such as Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who share these values and will ensure that our land remains alive, vibrant, and free, a nation which will be inclusive and work for us all. I urge my fellow Republicans to join me in crossing party lines this fall, to take advantage of this wonderful opportunity we have, not only to save our nation, but to rebuild it as well. Thank you for listening to my message.
Yep. Yeah, Haruka, of course they're going to go back to being Republicans, because they are Republicans. I mean, they're going to go back to vote. As long as there's a GOP party that they can vote for, these people aren't moving, like they're voting on something in a slightly different calculation. But just because they vote for Biden, yeah, of course they're going to, like, if let's say, you know, as a lifelong Democratic voter, there was a horrible Democratic presidential candidate who just, you know, did to the Democratic Party what Trump is doing to the Republican Party, I wouldn't become a Republican. I mean, would you? Would you switch parties just because of what? Would you switch a lifelong partisan identification because of what one leader did? Of course not. So I think it's unreasonable for us to expect these people to become Democrats. The important thing in this election is identifying our areas of commonality and where we can work together in order to achieve a common goal, which is to get rid of Trump. But to sort of expect people to suddenly change their political ideologies, their socialization, their values framework, all because of one man, they see Trump as an aberration. You know, and maybe they're more disgusted with certain kinds of Republicans who get elected, but they also have the mindset, I'm a good person and I'm a Republican. So the idea that there can be other people who can be good people and be Republicans who aren't like Trump. Yeah. And so I think that it is, you know, I see people criticizing the Lincoln Project going, oh, they're, you know, going to go back and be Republican. Yeah, of course they are. Of course they are. I mean, again, if there was one bad Democratic president, it wouldn't stop me from being a Democrat. I would see that person as an aberration from the norm. And I'm sure that's what these people do too. So, right. Well, I think I'm going to stop now because I have a lot to do today. I've got to prep for my game. I got to see whether or not I'm having a Patreon hangout. Don't even know what that's going to be about. But come back next week. We're going to be even closer to the election. Who knows what is going to happen between now and then. But come back to the channel this week, sometime, Kevin and I are going to do a politics happy hour where we're going to look at a bunch of animal pet clips and funny memes and news stories that we think you should know about. So thank you to Haruka and Brett and Rory Katz and JMM and Po Mama and Trans Gamer Girl and Queen, the Queen, and everybody else in the chat who stopped by, Joe Dunn, John Doe, everything else. Really appreciate your time and attention, and I hope you stay well, you stay healthy, and you stay happy wherever it is, whenever it is you are. Until next time, I have been Christy. Y'all have been awesome, and we'll see each other again really soon. All right. Have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.